Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here. With Dragon Ball Z becoming ever more popular in the year after the first movie, it was only a matter of time before a second movie was inevitable. And if you look at the runtime, the movie has a runtime of 60 minutes instead of 42, meaning I like to believe my theory I had about the first movie came true. Now, it's fairly clear that Dragon Ball Z was a money-making franchise. They knew they could afford to put in a better runtime on their movies, so this one could afford more time. Weird that it's 60 though and not 90, and of course if you know your Dragon Ball Z movies, it'd be quite some time before we get a 90-minute Dragon Ball Z movie. But I feel that's really only the case because Dragon Ball Z at this point was expected to make 2 movies every year. So I can see how early 90s animation would have their budgets and hands tied to the point where they had to make a movie with a non-traditional runtime. But technicalities aside, this is the first Dragon Ball Z movie that was made in 1990, 2 years before I was born. And like the first one, I prefer the Ocean dub here rather than the Funimation dub in this one too. Timeline-wise, this is where we start getting our big problems. More specifically because there's bigger contradictions here than in movie 1, where Dead Zone just introduced Gohan to one person earlier than the rest of the cast in the series. This movie has Goku fully mastering his training from King Kai, so he knows the Kaioken and Spirit Bomb techniques respectfully. So it's fair to say that this movie takes place after the Saiyan saga. However, problems arise in the form of Piccolo, who plays an active role in this movie, still being alive, and thus the Dragon Balls which are used in this movie are still active, and Kami's alive as well. For this, I start trying to connect the events in that scenario that I feel work for chronological standpoints of the movie's events. For this one, I always like to think it takes place in a timeline where Goku makes it back in time in order to confront Vegeta and Nappa, and Piccolo survives the attack that he blocked for Gohan. That way the Dragon Balls still work, and such Goku's mastery of his Kaioken technique and Spirit Bomb from King Kai can still be seen. You can even argue that in this timeline, Yamcha, Chiaotzu, and Tien Shinhan are still dead, so they actually have a reason to go search for the Dragon Balls in the future. With that being said, it's clear that this movie takes some notes from the events that take place in the Saiyan saga, more so than Dead Zone's did, right down to the same beam struggle that Goku had with Vegeta resolving in the same way. But now that we have the first chronologically controversial movie sorted out, let's get into that plot. So the movie opens up with Gohan and Oolong, oddly, as they scale the cold Zoomite-Zoomfree Mountains, because Oolong discovers that 6 of the 7 Dragon Balls are already gathered up. Oolong wants to take advantage of the situation and make a wish at last minute, much like how he did with Emperor Pilaf and wish for more panties. He brings Gohan because I don't know actually. My guess is because he just thought it was easy to make Goku help to hunt for the Dragon Balls way back in the Dragon Ball series as a kid, so Oolong probably thought it would be just as easy to convince Gohan. All the Dragon Balls are gathered by a scientist named Dr. Cochin. His wish to have the ice on the mountain melt so that he can reveal the lab of the infamous scientist and his partner Doctor Uiro. Shinron does this, and Gohan along with Oolong get attacked by the Biomen. Thankfully, Piccolo comes in time, but gets ambushed. Again. Gohan and Oolong escape, and Oolong tells Gohan not to tell a soul about the events that took place. It's already clear, though, that they both get caught when they get home respectfully. Chi-Chi chews out Gohan, and Oolong's forced to make dinner for the others. Meanwhile, the Biomen come to Kame's house in request of Master Roshi. Master Roshi is called on by Dr. Cochin to come into the laboratory of Dr. Willow, in which Roshi refuses up until the Biomen take Bulma as a hostage. When Roshi and Bulma make it to the lab, Roshi is pitted up against fighters known as the Bio Warriors, Ibifura, Mitsukatsun, and Kashimi. Master Roshi actually holds his own for a bit until they all use their individual abilities and overpower him. Dr. Cochin explains that he wanted to test Master Roshi's abilities because Master Roshi was known to be the world's strongest. Dr. Willow is revealed to be nothing more than a giant brain in a jar because an avalanche from the mountain destroyed his physical body. His goal is to obtain a new body, one that would match the strength that would be on par with his intelligence. Bulma interjects and states that Roshi is no longer the strongest fighter, and says that Goku is. Now, I'm going to take a small moment here to say this. This is kind of dumb. Not the plot of the villains, no, but the fact that Bulma flat out tells them that Goku's their target. Reason being is because this brings attention to a character that otherwise has nothing to do with them. I know the last movie, Dead Zone's overall plot was little about Goku, but there, at least they kidnapped Goku's son, so it became personal. Here it feels like Bulma is giving the movie a little nudge as to where to go. Now, you can argue, well, it was in spur of the moment. Bulma wanted to stop them from hurting Roshi, so it'd be a lot easier just to tell them what they needed to know. The problem here is that there's no context into that. They chain up Bulma, yeah, but they aren't torturing her. There's no reason she needed to tell him anything. Now, I get that later Goku goes to fight the Bio Warriors anyway because Oolong finally spills the beans about what took place, but that's a far better reason for Goku to actually show up to the lab. Here, the story just blew their load a little too quickly and Bulma just tells the villains all the info they need right away. They could have come in, noticed Goku was tearing through the Bio Warriors, and Dr. Cochin could have been curious. That's when Bulma could have filled them in. I understand that she does this, but at the same time, when it comes to narrative reveal, the placement can mean a lot of differences between good writing and, oh, you just wait till Mr. Goku gets here, he's gonna bop ya good when I tells ya. Now, Gohan did it in Dead Zone, but he's a kid. It's completely in his character to make threats that his dad'll come beat up the big bad versus Bulma, a grown woman who's supposedly one of the greatest minds on Earth, doing such a slip-up. Nitpicking aside, Goku gets word that Bulma and Roshi are kidnapped and rushes over. He dodges traps and fights Mitsukatsu. Then he fights Ibifura and Kashimi. Goku's outnumbered and is about to freeze until Gohan and Krillin show up and save him. Goku, having the chance to break free, uses the Kaioken and defeats both Bio Warriors and moves forward with Gohan and Krillin. While moving forward, Dr. Uiro and Dr. Cochin explain that they want to continue their experiments and Bulma's against them because she heard of them before as scientists that were outcasted for their inhumane experimentations. Cochin and Uiro recognize Bulma as the daughter of Dr. Briefs and explain that the other scientists were just not able to understand the breakthroughs that they were having in the makings of science history. Goku comes in and Piccolo arrives as well. Gohan believes that things are okay until it's shown that Dr. Cochin made a device to brainwash Piccolo. So Goku fights Piccolo. This angers Gohan and Dr. Cochin antagonizes him further, forcing Gohan into a fit of rage. This fit of rage breaks the head device on Piccolo, releasing him from Dr. Cochin's control. Krillin tries to break Bulma free, and he gets into a small skirmish with Cochin, with Roshi coming back as well. Dr. Uiro, finally fed up with the situation, comes out of the lab wall controlling a giant mech-like suit, and Goku and the gang attack him. They all work together but don't do much at first. Then, copying the same beam struggle Goku had with Vegeta, Goku pushes to Kaioken time 4 and blows Dr. Uiro far into the sky. Knowing he's not dead yet though, Goku charges for a spirit bomb while Piccolo, Gohan, and Krillin buy some time to charge. Goku launches the spirit bomb, defeating Dr. Uiro and saving the day. Roshi, flattered by the fact that his skills were praised by Cochin and Uiro only for Bulma to tell him that now he's just a dirty old man, everyone then laughs and the movie's over. Now, I like this movie a lot. Again, it's very fun and action-packed. Dead Zone and World's Strongest to me hold a place in my heart as some of the most action-packed Dragon Ball Z movies we've had. Mostly because they're still borrowing inspiration from early Dragon Ball and focusing more on martial arts rather than just straight-up brawls. However, as I've gotten older, I'm starting to see little cracks in the latter of the two movies. Now, World's Strongest has problems. Not big ones per se, but little cracks I've noticed as I've grown older and gotten to analyze the movie more as a whole. Be in the field of nitpicking, but I find it odd how in the last movie, Garlic Jr. knew that Goku was the strongest based on the events that happened in the 24th Tenkaichi Budokai, but Dr. Cochin, a scientist openly searching for the strongest warrior, is late on the upkeep that Goku's the strongest. I don't know, you would think he'd be on top of that intel, and I get it. They did this to get Master Roshi into the plot, and I'm grateful for him being there, because he wouldn't get a major fighting role again until Resurrection F, much later, where he's randomly shoved in the movie for marketing purposes. Here, while it's clear he's not the strongest, we can see that Roshi's still formidable against the Bio Warriors. Another issue that's only recently shown up in my head is the amount of similarities to the Saiyan Saga. I do find the similar imagery interesting at times, because they, unlike Super, at least have the decency to make it look good, and it fits the context of the movie story rather than just putting it in as shameless marketing plugs. But as I look back, I see a lot of callbacks. I made a joke about how the Biomen are basically Cybermen, but that's only because it's so jarringly true. At this point in the story, the Saiyan Saga was over, so I guess the writers were just hoping we forgot about them. But it's kind of hard to do that when Piccolo up and kills one of the Biomen in the exact same way he killed the Cybermen in the series. One of the other things this and the last movie really rely on is Goku going on a fetch quest to rescue people he knows. Which, if you know that Goku's not a hero and is just a fighter, can really bug you based on the repetition of his actions between this movie and the last. Maybe that's why Toriyama himself was a little upset with Goku's portrayal. Me personally, I know he's not a straight-up hero, and he's saving people that he actually has a personal bond with, so it's not exactly heroics. But you can definitely see why the general audience would call him a hero in the traditional sense if you watch these two movies back to back. Now, I know I'm being rather negative on the movie, but in all honesty, like I said before, it holds a special place in my heart because it's presented well. So there are some good things to pull from it. For example, I love the moralistic battle Bulma has with Dr. Cochin and Dr. Willow on how the experiments they are conducting aren't moral. And while this has absolutely nothing to do with Goku or the others, it's good to see someone from the cast that can contribute in ways that aren't just fighting. And while I ragged on Bulma before for spilling out the information to them earlier, I will say they use her character as a rather well expositional piece and a different view on the acts of science. Similar to how the last movie had Kami versus Garlic in a past conflict, we see that while not as direct, Bulma stands on her beliefs that science should benefit mankind but still hold a moral high ground, while Willow technically wants the same thing but is prepared to make those moral sacrifices to get faster and what he feels are more efficient results. Now, it's not exactly deep analytical levels of literature-based writing, but I love the moral conflict and science theme that this movie is holding, even if it has nothing to do with Goku. Now, as much as I like this movie, it has a bit more pressure on it being the second movie with a longer runtime, so more is expected from it. So, the question stands, did they use the time effectively? Well, yes and no. While not long, I did see some parts of the movie that were there for the sake of just being there. You may have noticed that I completely skipped out about talking about a segment of the movie where Gohan has a dream musical number about how he looks up to Mr. Piccolo and would rather spend time with him rather than studying and whatnot. The reason originally was I completely forgot about that segment of the movie. Then when I remembered it, I left it out because it added nothing. While the last movie put in a musical section, it fit with Gohan's antics while being kidnapped after he ate an alcoholic fruit. This one contributes nothing and can completely be skipped over. It's clear since Toei got the green light to make a second movie, they tried their hardest not to stray away from the formula that worked so well the first time. Piccolo gets ambushed. There's a backstory. The main villains have this backstory. Someone gets kidnapped. Goku has to go save them. Piccolo and Goku fight. Gohan goes into a fit of rage. There's an obvious pattern that's going on here. But now that they have more time to fill it with, little things that hopefully met the 18 minutes left of runtime. While not all bad, it's clear that they were trying to meet a quote on this one. While this movie does follow steps from the first one, it does things better than the former, one being the Bio Warriors themselves. While we see that this rule of three for minions is done a lot in the last movie and in a few movies in the future, this movie I feel has some creative wacky minions that use some pretty fun looking powers to separate them from the generic goons that Goku and the gang have or will face in the future movie. Krillin is given a lot more to do here, while in the last movie he was mostly played to save Goku once, watch Gohan and become comic relief. Here he saves Goku, tries to save Bulma, has a small skirmish with Dr. Cochin, works with Goku and Roshi to beat Willow, and buys some time for the Spirit Bomb. Gohan shows up to fight, mostly out of guilt because he feels responsible for the events that took place in the Zoomite Tomb-Free Mountains, which isn't his character. Similar to how he felt guilty in the Sand Saga and flew off with Bulma and Krillin to Namek to wish the others who died back. So it's not just a plot device with hidden powers this time, like in movie 1. Now he's a developing character with hidden powers. To me, Piccolo's the least useful here. I get it, at the time, Piccolo was very popular and they needed small fights with him and Goku to eat up for the 60 minutes. But the cost was Piccolo getting jumped, again, only to come back, again, and fight with Goku, again. Side note, I think this is the last time we'll see Oolong have a major role in a Dragon Ball Z movie, at least until the uncut version of Battle of Gods. Now, even though I sounded critical throughout this, I'm doing this because I care about the series overall. I do still love this movie. The action, the theming, and the characters are still solid, with some holes in the plot here and there, as well as a lot of repetition from both the last movie and the main series. This movie doesn't hold up as much as the former, but it's still a gem I'd recommend watching. It does at least have a story to tell and fully utilizes the characters needed to tell said story. While it borrows from Dead Zone, it does improve on some things. While it fills its runtime with some fluff, it's not enough to deter you away from the movie. Now this movie, like the last, relies on you to know a lot of the Dragon Ball Z series well. But since it's a little screwy with the timeline anyway, this feels more like a relax and enjoy the show movie. But it still holds merit. I'm giving it a 5-star ball out of 7. And that ends my 2 Dragon Ball Z movies that I watched in the Ocean dub. Every movie from here on out will be versions I own the Funimation dub to, with the next being Dragon Ball Z Movie 3, The Tree of Might. So until then, I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3 out.